The ground shook with explosions. Hana pressed herself against the broken metal of a crashed ship. Her medical bag felt heavy on her back. All around her, soldiers from different alien races were fighting and dying. The air smelled like burning metal and chemicals. She was a human medic. Her job was to save lives, but the aliens she worked with did not think much of humans. They thought humans were weak. They thought human bodies broke too easily. They did not understand why Earth sent medical workers to this war. The war was between the Galactic Coalition and an enemy called the Vrexian Swarm. The Coalition had many powerful alien species. There were the Keltherans, who looked like giant insects with purple armor. There were the Vextar, who were made of living crystal. There were the Corel, who came from water worlds and had see-through skin. Before the battle started, a Keltheran commander named Ixthor had spoken to Hana. His voice was harsh and clicking. He told her that humans were too fragile for war. He said she should stay far behind the fighting where it was safe. He said real warriors did not need help from weak creatures like humans. But war does not follow plans. The enemy had surprised them. The Vrexians attacked from an unexpected direction. Now the battlefield was chaos. Soldiers were scattered. The careful formations were broken. And Hana found herself in the middle of the fighting. A Corel soldier was lying in front of her. His name tag said Pluven. He was badly hurt. Through his transparent skin, Hana could see purple blood spreading inside his body. His gills were moving weakly. He was dying. The Coalition had medical rules. They called it triage. When there were too many wounded soldiers and not enough medics, you had to choose who to save. Pluven was Category 3. That meant his injuries were too bad. The rules said to let him die and help someone else instead. Hana looked at the dying soldier. She thought about all the wars humans had fought on Earth. Humans had learned hard lessons about saving lives in battle. They had learned tricks and techniques that other species did not know. And the most important lesson was this: never give up on someone while they are still breathing. She opened her medical bag. Her hands moved quickly. She gave Pluven a medicine to make his blood clot. She pressed on the wounds inside his body through his skin. She built a simple breathing machine from spare parts. It was not perfect. It was rough and fast. But it worked. Pluven's gills started moving stronger. His eyes opened. He was breathing normally. He would live. A Vextar medic saw what happened. Her crystalline body flashed with surprise. She came over to Hana. Her voice was like musical notes. She said it was impossible. She said Pluven's injuries were too severe. She asked how a human had saved him. Hana did not have time to explain. She pointed at another wounded soldier. A Keltheran warrior had a crushed chest. She told the Vextar medic to help her. They needed to work together. They needed to work fast. For hours, Hana worked without stopping. Soldiers kept coming. Some had burns from energy weapons. Some had broken bones. Some had wounds from alien biology that was trying to kill them from inside. Each time, the Coalition medic said the soldier was too badly hurt. Each time, Hana proved them wrong. She used techniques from Earth's history. Quick surgery to stop the worst bleeding. Pressure bandages that worked on different body types. Medicines mixed in new ways. Everything was fast and rough, but everything worked. The soldiers lived. At one point, enemy soldiers broke through the defensive line. They were coming toward the medical station. Hana picked up a rifle from a dead soldier. She had never wanted to fight. She was a healer. But she would not let the wounded be killed. She fired at the enemy. Her shots were accurate. She had trained for this, even though she hoped she would never need to use a weapon. Several enemy soldiers fell. Other Coalition soldiers arrived to help. Together, they pushed the enemy back. Then Hana put down the rifle and went back to saving lives. When the battle finally ended, the sun was setting. Hana was covered in blood from a dozen different species. Her hands were shaking from exhaustion. She had treated 47 wounded soldiers. 39 of them had survived. 15 of those would have died if she had followed the Coalition's medical rules. Commander Ixthor walked up to her. His purple armor was cracked and scorched. His clicking voice was quieter than before. He said he had watched her save squad leader Kethral. He said Kethral's wounds should have killed him. But now Kethral was walking and talking. The commander wanted to know how this was possible. How could such a fragile species do what stronger species could not? Hana looked up at the towering alien warrior. Her voice was tired but steady. She told him that humans learned to heal because humans learned to hurt. Earth had thousands of years of terrible wars. Humans killed each other with every weapon they could invent, so they also learned to save each other from every kind of wound. What the commander called weakness, humans called motivation. When your body is fragile, you learn to be very, very good at fixing it. The commander was silent for a long moment. Then he did something Hana had never seen a Keltheran do. He bowed his head to her. It was a gesture of deep respect. He said that perhaps the coalition had been wrong about humans. Perhaps there was more to strength than thick armor and powerful weapons. That night, Hana sat alone outside the medical tent. She was too tired to sleep. She thought about all the soldiers she had saved. She thought about the ones she could not save. She wondered if the coalition would let her teach other medics what she knew. So many lives could be saved if they learned human medicine. She did not know it yet, but word of her actions was already spreading. The soldiers she saved were telling stories. The Vextar medic was sharing what she had witnessed through her species' telepathic network. Across the coalition forces, people were starting to talk about the small human medic who saved the unsavable. Far away, in the command ships orbiting above the planet, coalition generals were reading the battle reports. They were seeing something they did not expect. The human medic had changed the casualty numbers. She had done what their own doctor said was impossible, and they were starting to wonder what else could humans teach them. What other secrets did this young species possess? If one human medic could make such a difference, what could humanity as a whole contribute to the war? Hana finally fell asleep under the alien stars. She dreamed of home, of Earth, of the medical school where she had learned her skills. She dreamed of all the teachers who had told her that medicine was about never giving up. She dreamed of the oath she had taken, to do no harm but also to fight death with everything she had. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The war was far from over. But tonight, Hana had proven something important. She had proven that humans belonged in this galactic war, not because they were strong, but because they refused to let others die, and sometimes that refusal was the strongest power of all. News traveled fast in the coalition military. Within days, every soldier in the fleet had heard about the human medic named Hana. They said she could save soldiers that no one else could save. They said she fought alongside warriors while healing them. The stories grew bigger with each telling. The soldiers Hana had saved went back to their units. They told everyone what had happened. The Karel soldier Pluven showed his scars with pride. He said a human had given him back his life when his own doctors had given up. The Keltheran warrior Kethral told his squad that humans understood battle in ways the coalition had forgotten. The Vextar medic who had witnessed Hana's work did something even more powerful. The Vextar were crystal beings who could share thoughts and memories directly. She sent her memories of Hana's techniques through the Vextar communication network. Thousands of Vextar across the fleet experienced those memories. They saw exactly how Hana had worked. They felt her determination. They understood her methods. 1 week after the battle, Hana received an order that surprised her. She was to report immediately to the Coalition Strategic Command. This was the central command ship where the most important generals and admirals made decisions about the entire war. No simple medic had ever been called there before. The command ship was called Dawn of Unity. It was enormous, bigger than a city. Its weapons could destroy entire continents. Inside, the corridors were huge to accommodate different alien species. Hana felt very small walking through them. She was brought to a massive briefing room. Holographic displays covered the walls, showing maps of star systems and battle reports. Around a huge table stood the most powerful military leaders in the coalition. There was General Thaxkor, a giant Keltheran whose armor was decorated with medals from 100 battles. There was High Resonant Crystallis, a Vextar whose crystal body glowed with inner light. There was Admiral Pluvok, a Curel who commanded the coalition's naval forces. And there was Hana, standing in her simple uniform, still showing burn marks from the recent battle. She was barely 5.5 feet tall. She looked like a child next to these massive alien leaders, but she stood straight and met their eyes without fear. General Thaxkor spoke first. His voice was deep like thunder. He pointed to the holographic displays showing star maps. Red markers indicated enemy positions. There were so many red markers. He explained that the Vrexian swarm was gathering for a massive attack. Intelligence reports suggested they would hit the coalition's core worlds. Billions of civilians would be at risk. The casualties would be terrible. High Resonant Crystallis spoke next. Her voice seemed to come from inside Hana's mind, a side effect of how Vextar communicated. She said their medical systems could not handle the number of wounded that was coming. They had calculated that 7 out of every 10 wounded soldiers would die. Not because of the enemy, but because coalition medicine could not save them all. Hana understood immediately. They were talking about triage on a massive scale. They would have to let thousands of soldiers die because they did not have enough medics, enough supplies, enough knowledge to save everyone. The coalition was preparing to make terrible choices. Admiral Pluvok looked at Hana with his large, dark eyes. He said they had studied her medical reports from the recent battle. They had interviewed the soldiers she saved. They had consulted with their best medical experts. Everyone agreed that what Hana did should not have been possible. Yet she had done it. The Admiral asked if she could teach others to do the same. Hana took a deep breath. She said she could teach them. She asked for 3 weeks and access to all the Coalition's field medics. She would train them in human combat medicine. She would show them techniques that humans had learned through thousands of years of terrible wars. The room went silent. General Thaxacor's mandibles clicked with what might have been disbelief. He asked how one human could teach thousands of medics from different species. Each species had different biology. Each had their own medical traditions going back thousands of years. What made Hana think human methods would work for everyone? Hana stepped forward to the holographic display. She pulled out her own data tablet and connected it to the system. Images appeared on the walls around them. They showed battles from Earth's history. Soldiers in muddy trenches treating wounded under artillery fire. Medics in desert wars working in makeshift hospitals. Field surgeons operating while buildings collapsed around them. She explained that humans had fought constant wars for 10,000 years. Every type of weapon, every kind of wound, humans had learned to treat it. The techniques were not about perfect medicine. They were about survival. About keeping soldiers alive long enough to get them to real hospitals. About accepting that rough and fast was better than perfect and too late. More images appeared. Statistics showing how human battlefield medicine improved over centuries. Death rates dropping as new techniques were discovered. Each technique learned in blood and pain and desperation. Hana said that humans were good at emergency medicine because they had so much practice at emergencies. High-resonant crystallus glowed with a deep blue color, which Hana had learned meant the Vextar was thinking hard. The high resonance said that Hana spoke truth. The Vextar had seen her memories through their network. The techniques looked crude, but they worked. The real question was whether other species could learn to think like humans. Could they learn to accept imperfect solutions when perfect ones were impossible? General Thaxacor made a rumbling sound deep in his throat. He said they would give Hana her chance. 3 weeks to train the medics. But he warned her that if she failed, thousands would die. If her methods did not work when the real attack came, their blood would be on her hands. The pressure was enormous. Hana felt the weight of what she had just agreed to do. 3 weeks to change how an entire galaxy approached medicine. 3 weeks to teach aliens to think like humans. 3 weeks to prepare for a battle that might kill millions. But she also felt something else. She felt determined. She thought about all the human medics throughout history who had faced impossible situations. They had found ways to save lives when everyone said it could not be done. They had invented new techniques under fire. They had refused to give up even when giving up seemed logical. Admiral Pluvok told her that a training facility was being prepared on Kelthera Prime's third moon. 200 coalition medics from 7 different species would be there tomorrow. They would be her students. Some would be eager to learn. Others would be skeptical. Some might even be hostile to the idea of learning from a human. Hana nodded. She asked for one more thing. She wanted other human medics to help her teach. She knew several who had more experience than her in different areas. One had been a trauma surgeon in Earth's worst war zones. Another had served with special forces. Together they could cover more material and teach more effectively. The generals agreed. Resources would be provided. Whatever Hana needed, she would get it. The coalition was betting everything on her success. As Hana left the briefing room, she felt both excited and terrified. She was about to attempt something that had never been done before. She would try to teach the galaxy what it meant to be human. Not the fighting or the technology, but the determination. The refusal to accept that anyone was beyond saving. The knowledge that sometimes the only thing standing between life and death was someone who cared enough to try. That night, Hana contacted her fellow human medics. She explained what she needed from them. They all agreed immediately. They understood what was at stake. In 3 weeks, the biggest battle of the war would begin, and whether the coalition won or lost might depend on what they could teach a group of alien medics about human medicine. The countdown had begun. The training facility on Kelthera Prime's third moon had been a weapons testing ground before. Now it was transformed into a medical school. Tents were set up for practice surgeries. Dummy patients representing different alien species were arranged in rows. Medical equipment from across the coalition was gathered in one place. Hana stood before 200 medics. They came from 7 different species. Some were tall, some were short. Some had scales, some had fur. Some were made of crystal. All of them were experienced medical professionals. All of them had saved many lives. And almost all of them looked at Hana with doubt in their eyes. She could see what they were thinking. They were wondering why they should learn from a human. Humans were new to space travel. Human medical technology was primitive compared to most coalition species. Human bodies were weak. What could humans possibly teach those who had practiced medicine for thousands of years? Hana activated the holographic display behind her. An image of the human body appeared. It showed bones that broke easily, skin that tore, organs that were soft and vulnerable. No armor, no natural weapons, no special abilities, just flesh and bone. She told them she knew what they were thinking. She knew they questioned why they were here, so she would show them exactly why human medicine was different. She pulled up videos from Earth's history, not medical procedures but battles. Terrible, brutal battles where humans died in thousands. The medics watched in shocked silence. They saw wars fought with simple weapons that still killed efficiently. They saw battles that lasted for years in muddy trenches. They saw cities reduced to rubble while humans fought street by street. They saw weapons that burned, poisoned, and destroyed in ways designed specifically to kill humans. Then Hana showed them the other side. She showed them the medics who worked in those terrible conditions. Surgeons operating with basic tools while artillery exploded around them. Medics running into gunfire to drag wounded soldiers to safety. Medical teams working for days without rest, trying to save as many as possible. She explained that humans were fragile, so they had to get creative. They developed techniques that worked with limited resources. They learned to diagnose wounds in seconds instead of minutes. They invented procedures that could be done quickly under terrible conditions. Every technique came from necessity, from watching people die and refusing to accept it. A Keltheran medic named Corvex raised his claw. He asked what good speed was if the diagnosis was wrong. Better to be careful and correct than fast and mistaken. This was the coalition way. Careful, thorough, precise, Hana called him forward. She set up a simulation with 3 wounded dummy patients. All 3 were critically injured. By coalition protocols, he could only save one if he worked carefully. She told him to choose which one would live. Corvex studied the patients carefully. He chose the one with the best chance of survival. He began working with precise, practiced movements. Hana let him work for 5 minutes. Then she stopped the simulation. In that time, he had stabilized 1 patient. The other 2 had died. Now Hana reset the simulation. Same 3 patients, same critical injuries, but this time she demonstrated the human way. Quick assessment, rapid intervention on all 3, rough stabilization, accepting imperfect solutions. In 5 minutes, all 3 patients were stable enough to survive until they reached a hospital. None received perfect care, but all would live. The room was quiet. Corvex stared at the results. Hana explained the key difference. Coalition medicine aimed for perfection. Human medicine aimed for survival. When resources were limited and time was short, survival was better than perfection. Over the next days, Hana and her team pushed the coalition medics hard. They taught them about the golden hour, that critical 60 minutes where fast action saved lives. They showed them tourniquet techniques that could be adapted for different alien bodies. They demonstrated damage control surgery, where the goal was not to fix everything but to stop the dying process. Hana brought in other human instructors. There was Borum, who had been a trauma surgeon during Earth's resource wars. He taught about treating mass casualties when hospitals were overwhelmed. He showed them how to triage hundreds of patients in minutes, making quick decisions about who needed help most urgently. There was Jiwoo, a former Special Forces medic. She taught them how to work under fire, how to perform surgery while wearing armor, how to treat wounds while being shot at, how to drag wounded soldiers to safety while carrying full medical gear. The coalition medics had never trained for this. They usually worked far behind the lines. There was Tae-hyun, who specialized in emergency medicine. He taught them to recognize the signs of shock in different species, how to keep someone alive when their body was failing, how to improvise when proper equipment was not available, how to make do with whatever was at hand. The coalition medics struggled at first. Everything seemed wrong to them. Human medicine was messy, rushed, imperfect. It violated principles they had learned over years of training. It felt like they were doing bad medicine, even when they could see it worked. But slowly, understanding began to dawn. They started to see the logic behind the chaos. They realized that human medicine was not careless. It was calculated. Every shortcut had a reason. Every rough technique had been tested in real battles. Humans had learned these lessons the hard way, by watching what worked and what did not. Corvex, the Keltheran medic, became one of the best students. He threw himself into learning with fierce determination. He told Hana that he finally understood. Coalition medicine assumed there would always be enough time and resources. Human medicine assumed there would never be enough of either. That difference changed everything. A Vextar medic named Shalis had an important insight. She said that human medicine was about accepting reality, the reality that war was chaos, the reality that perfect care was impossible under fire, the reality that good enough right now was better than perfect too late. This was wisdom her species had never needed to learn because they rarely fought desperate wars. By the end of the third week, the transformation was remarkable. The coalition medics moved with new confidence. They made decisions quickly. They adapted human techniques to their own species' biology. They ran through scenarios that would have been impossible under their old methods, and now they succeeded. On the final day, high-resonant Crystallis came to observe. She watched as the medics went through a massive casualty simulation, hundreds of wounded, failing equipment, constant simulated combat. The medics worked through it all with efficiency that would have been impossible 3 weeks earlier. The high-resonant glowed with deep gold light, a sign of profound understanding in Vextar culture. She told Hana that something remarkable had happened. The human had not just taught new techniques. She had taught a new way of thinking. She had shown them that survival sometimes required accepting imperfection. General Thaxcor was also present. He announced that the Vrexian attack would begin in 3 days. The coalition forces would face their greatest test. The medics would have their chance to prove that these new methods worked in real combat. Everyone in the room understood the stakes. Thousands of lives depended on what they had learned. That evening, Hana stood alone watching the sunset over the training facility. She felt proud of what the medics had accomplished, but she also felt worried. Training and real combat were different things. She needed to be there when the battle started. She needed to see if her teaching would truly save lives. She made a decision. She would request assignment to the front lines. Some would say she was too valuable, that she should stay safe. But Hana knew her place was with the wounded wherever they fell. That was what being a medic meant. Not staying safe while others bled, but being there when they needed you most. The Vrexian attack came like a storm of metal and fire. Intelligence had predicted 50,000 enemy ships. The actual number was over 200,000. The coalition forces were overwhelmed. From the first moment, Hana was in a Keltheran transport ship as it plunged through the atmosphere of Helion 3. The planet was home to 20 million coalition, civilians who lived in underground cities. If the planet fell, they would all die. The transport shook violently as enemy fire exploded around it. Hana gripped her medical bag tightly and prayed they would reach the ground alive. With her was Daijung, another human medic, and a squad of mixed coalition soldiers. They were being dropped into a crystal forest on the northern continent. Their mission was simple: set up a field hospital and save as many wounded as possible. They had 30 minutes before casualties would start arriving. The transport crashed through the crystal trees and hit the ground hard. Everyone stumbled out, weapons ready, looking for enemies. But this area was still secure for now. In the distance, they could hear the sounds of battle growing closer. Hana and Daejung worked quickly to set up the medical station. Surgical tables made from cargo containers. Medical supplies arranged for quick access. Triage areas marked with colored flags. Everything the humans had taught the coalition medics was put into practice here. The first wounded arrived before they were fully ready. These were the walking wounded, soldiers who could still move on their own or be carried by their friends. Hana and the coalition medics processed them quickly using the new triage protocols. Fast assessment, rapid treatment, send them to the rear. Within minutes, dozens were stabilized and moving toward safety. Then the seriously wounded began arriving. A Karel soldier with burns covering half his body. A Vextar whose crystal structure was shattered in multiple places. A Keltheran warrior with a hole through her chest from an energy weapon. These were the cases that would have been written off under the old system. Too badly hurt, too few resources, let them die and save others. But the coalition medics did not write them off. They used what Hana had taught them. Fast intervention, rough stabilization, good enough for now. And the soldiers lived. One after another, cases that should have been fatal were turned into survivable injuries. The medics moved with confidence that came from their training. Hana worked without stopping. Her hands moved through procedures until they were cut and bleeding from torn gloves. But she did not notice. She was in the zone, that place where training takes over and you just move from one patient to the next doing what needs to be done. But the Vrexian assault was too massive. Wounded soldiers arrived faster than they could be treated. Supplies began running low. Equipment broke down from constant use. The crystal forest around them caught fire from energy weapons. Smoke filled the air, making it hard to breathe and see. After 18 hours of continuous work, Daejong collapsed from exhaustion. He had pushed himself too far and his body simply gave out. Other medics were also reaching their limits. But Hana kept going. She could not stop. There were too many wounded, too many who needed her. On the third day of battle, disaster struck. The Vrexian forces broke through the defensive line. Enemy soldiers, horrible creatures of biological armor and hatred, came charging toward the medical station. There were hundreds of them. Most of the guards had been called away to reinforce other positions. Only a few soldiers remained to protect the wounded. And on Hana's operating table was a young Keltheran named Kexeril. He was in the middle of surgery. His chest was open. He could not be moved or he would die. Hana made a split-second decision. She grabbed a plasma rifle from a fallen guard. She had trained for this possibility, though she had hoped never to face it. She was a healer, not a fighter. But sometimes healing meant fighting to protect those who could not protect themselves. The first Vrexian warrior burst into the medical tent. Hana shot it. The creature fell. Another came through. She shot it too. She moved between positions, using every bit of cover, making every shot count. Behind her, she shouted instructions to the other medics, telling them how to finish Kexeril's surgery while she held off the assault. More coalition soldiers heard the fighting and came running. Together, they fought to hold the medical station. The battle was desperate and close. Vrexian warriors were strong and vicious, but the coalition soldiers fought with fury, knowing that wounded comrades depended on them. The fighting lasted 2 hours. When reinforcements finally arrived and pushed the Vrexians back, Hana was still standing. Her uniform was torn and burned. She had minor wounds all over her body that she barely remembered receiving, but she was alive, and so was Kexeril. The surgery had been completed even in the middle of combat. As soon as the area was secure, Hana went back to treating wounded. She worked for several more hours before her body finally gave out. She collapsed next to an operating table, unconscious before she hit the ground. When she woke up, she was in a hospital ship orbiting above the planet. White walls, clean air, the hum of advanced medical equipment. She was in a real hospital, not a battlefield tent. She tried to sit up and pain shot through her entire body. General Thaxkor was standing beside her bed. The massive Keltheran warrior looked tired. His armor was damaged and scorched, but there was something different in his eyes when he looked at Hana. It was respect, deep and genuine. He told her the numbers. She had personally treated 347 wounded soldiers during the battle. She had killed 19 Vrexian warriors while protecting the medical station. She had refused evacuation until every wounded soldier was treated, and the medics she had trained had saved thousands more across the entire battlefield. The general said that the new medical protocols had reduced casualties by 43%. Soldiers who would have died under the old system were surviving. The difference was enormous. Hana had done something the general thought was impossible. She had changed how the war would be fought. Hana's throat was dry. She asked the only question that mattered to her. Did they win the battle? Did they hold the planet? General Thaxkor nodded slowly. They had held Helion 3. It had been close, almost a defeat, but they held. The 20 million civilians were safe, and it was because of what Hana and her team had accomplished, because they had shared human knowledge with the coalition, because they had refused to accept that some soldiers were beyond saving. The general placed something on the table beside her bed. It was a medal, the Star of Unity. This was the coalition's highest honor. In 1,000 years it had only been given twice before. Now a human medic would be the third recipient. Hana looked at the medal but did not touch it. She told the general she did not want honors. She just wanted to get back to work. There were more battles to fight, more soldiers to save. The general made a sound that might have been a laugh. He said she would have time to rest first. But yes, there was more work ahead. The war was far from over. And now the coalition had a new weapon, more powerful than any gun or bomb. They had hope. Hope that wounds could be treated. Hope that soldiers would survive. Hope that humans had brought to the galaxy. Hana closed her eyes. She was so tired. But she also felt proud. Not of herself, but of what she represented. She had shown the galaxy what humans could do. Not through violence, but through healing. Not through strength, but through determination. And that was worth more than any medal. 6 months after the Battle of Helion 3, the war began to change. The Vrexian swarm was no longer advancing. The coalition forces were pushing back, slowly, painfully, but steadily, and everyone knew one of the main reasons why. The medical protocols Hana had introduced spread through the entire coalition military. Every species adopted the techniques. Medical academies across 1,000 worlds began teaching human trauma medicine alongside traditional methods. The casualty rates dropped dramatically. Soldiers who would have died now survived. And that changed everything. Morale improved across the coalition forces. Soldiers fought harder knowing they had a real chance of surviving their wounds. They knew that if they were injured, medics trained in the new methods would fight to save them. That knowledge made them brave. It made them willing to take risks that won battles. Hana herself had been promoted to captain. She wore the Star of Unity on her uniform, though she still felt uncomfortable with the honor. She had been offered command positions, safe assignments far from the fighting. Important people wanted her to become an administrator or a teacher at a major academy. But she refused every offer. She remained at the front lines. She trained new medics, developed improved protocols, and personally led medical teams into the most dangerous combat zones. She could not stay safe while others bled. That was not who she was. She was a field medic and her place was with the wounded. But something else had changed too. Hana had become a symbol. Her face appeared on recruitment posters across the coalition. The caption read, "Small species, big impact." Young people from dozens of worlds joined the medical corps because of her example. They wanted to save lives like she did. Stories about her spread far beyond the military. Civilians on worlds that had been saved told their children about the human healer who never gave up. Artists created paintings and songs about her. Historians began writing about her impact on the war. She had become a legend while still living. One evening, Hana sat with her closest friends at Coalition military headquarters. Daejung had recovered from his exhaustion and was now her second in command. Borum directed the Coalition's medical research division, developing new techniques based on human principles. Jiwoo trained special operations medics who worked in the most dangerous situations. They watched the sunset over Kelthera Prime and shared a bottle of human whiskey. The drink had become surprisingly popular among Coalition officers. They said it reminded them of the fierce spirit humans brought to everything they did. Jiwoo smiled and said they were calling Hana a legend now. The human who taught the galaxy to heal. The small medic who changed how an entire civilization approached medicine. It sounded like something from a story, not real life. Hana laughed quietly. She said she had just shown them what humans already knew. Medicine was not about having the best technology or the most advanced biology. It was about refusing to let people die when you could do something about it. It was about determination, not equipment. Borum added that Hana had changed how aliens saw humans. Before they respected human military abilities, humans were good fighters, but they did not truly understand humans until Hana showed them that human compassion was just as fierce as human combat skills. That healing could be as powerful as any weapon. Daejung raised his glass. He proposed a toast to the most dangerous healer in the galaxy. They all drank, enjoying a rare moment of peace and friendship in the middle of a war. Their moment was interrupted by a Vextar messenger. Her crystalline body pulsed with urgent orange light. She said there had been a breakthrough at the Cygnus front. The Vrexians had launched a surprise attack. There were heavy casualties. The field commanders were requesting Hana specifically. Hana put down her drink and stood up. She asked how many wounded there were. The messenger said hundreds at least, possibly thousands by the time Hana's team could arrive. It was a disaster that needed the best medics the coalition had. Hana looked at her team. She asked if they were coming. They all stood up immediately. Within an hour, they were aboard a fast transport ship, racing toward another battlefield. Another chance to save lives. Another opportunity to prove that humans were more than their reputation as warriors. As the ship jumped to faster than light speed, Hana looked out at the stars. She thought about how far she had come. From a simple corporal that aliens dismissed, to a captain that the entire coalition respected. From someone told to stay in the rear, to someone requested by name at the worst battles. But she knew her real achievement was not personal glory. It was the knowledge she had shared. The techniques that were saving thousands of lives across the galaxy. The change in thinking that made soldiers believe they could survive. That was her legacy. That was what mattered. In the centuries that followed after the coalition finally won the war against the Vrexian swarm, historians would write many books about how it happened. They would discuss brilliant strategies, technological breakthroughs, and heroic sacrifices. All of these things were important, but those who had actually fought in the war knew something else. They knew the war was won in field hospitals and medical tents. It was won in the seconds and minutes stolen from death. It was won by medics who refused to accept that anyone was beyond saving. It was won by the knowledge that one determined human had shared with the galaxy. Universities established programs named after her. The Hana protocols became standard medical practice across hundreds of worlds. Young medics studied her methods and tried to embody her spirit. She became the example that every medical student learned about, the proof that one person could change everything. But Captain Hana never sought to become a legend. She simply did what all good healers do. She looked at the wounded and the dying. She looked at the ones everyone else had given up on, and she said the words that became her motto, the words that defined her entire career. Not on my watch. Those 4 simple words captured everything about human medicine. They spoke of determination and refusal to quit. They spoke of taking personal responsibility for every life. They spoke of fighting death with the same intensity that others fought enemies. The galaxy learned many things from humanity joining the coalition. They learned about human military tactics and determination in combat. They learned about human technology and innovation. But perhaps the most important lesson was about human compassion, about the fierce, stubborn refusal to let others die. Years later, when asked about her greatest achievement, Hana always gave the same answer. It was not the medal or the rank or the fame. It was the soldiers who walked away from battles they should not have survived. It was the families who got to see their loved ones again. It was every life saved by medics using the techniques she taught. She remained a field medic until the end of the war. She trained thousands of others. She developed new protocols that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. She personally saved more lives than anyone could count, and she inspired a generation to believe that healing was just as important as fighting. When the war finally ended, when the last Vrexian ship was defeated and peace returned to the galaxy, there were celebrations on every world. But in the medical tents, the field hospitals, and the trauma centers, the medics raised their glasses to one person above all others, to Captain Hana, the human who taught them that fragility could be strength, that determination could overcome any obstacle, that one person who cared enough could change the fate of billions. To the medic who became a legend not through violence but through the simple, powerful act of refusing to let people die. And somewhere, on a quiet world where she had finally retired, Hana smiled. Because she knew the truth. She was not special. She had just done what humans had always done. She had looked at an impossible situation and decided it was not impossible after all. She had seen people who needed help and given it without hesitation. She had refused to accept defeat. That was the real lesson humans taught the galaxy. Not about medicine or tactics or technology, but about the power of simply refusing to give up. About fighting for every life with everything you have. About being small but fierce, fragile but determined, human but extraordinary. And that lesson would echo across the stars for generations to come.